It's thinking. All right, we are live. Take it away.
Hi, I'm Victoria Gerken. I'm the publisher at Podium Audio, and we are a digital-first audio and ebook publisher. And we publish a lot of genre fiction, indie authors. You're our people. And it is my delight today to talk to Nicholas Sansbury Smith about rights. Nick, you want to say something about yourself?
Sure. I'm an author. I'm a small press too, but primarily I just publish my own books. When I self-publish, I also work with. I'm a hybrid author, so I work with different publishers. Blackstone's my primary publisher. I've done stuff in the past with Orbit, Simon & Schuster, different audio companies too. But I got my start in KDP in 2014, and then in audio, I think it was 2014 as well. So I got in at a good time in audio, and I've had some luck and some success. So happy to talk to you guys about that today. Answer any questions.
Yeah, I think your journey through publishing, I think, has given you, a lot of perspective about rights. Like,
yeah,
there are a lot of rights, and that's I don't know what the level of experience in the room is, but just to sort of give you an idea of what we're talking about. Obviously, you write a story as an IP that has underlying rights with it. You've got an ebook for the most obvious one. You've got print. You've got hardcover, paperback, foreign rights, translation rights, and then in those translation rights, all of those things again: ebook, print, audio, all in those. Large print, book club, merchandise, film and TV, which is the big dance, and then graphic novel potentially, comic books. There's a lot of rights that you've created with your story. So it's worth taking care of them, knowing what they are, and potentially exploiting them. Which exploiting is such a bad, I don't like that word, but that is kind of what we're doing. And then obviously Podium Audio, we are primarily talking about audiobook rights. So that's my area of expertise currently, but I sold Subsidiary rights at Random House back in the noughts. So, and the world has shifted since I did that. So yeah, 2014 you said you started? I don't know, I thought 13.
It was 13 technically, but that I was not working as a writer full term, so I don't consider really my shift until 2014. But yes, technically 2013 is when I first started self-publishing.
So if you put yourself back in those shoes,
yeah.
What do you wish you had known then that you now know, that you can share with these people?
Quite a bit, especially on rights, because back then, and we can talk a little bit about how I would do things with an agent and how I would do things without an agent, because I think that's important, because some people don't want an agent, some people do. I personally see a benefit to having an agent to open certain doors that you might not have access to. I started with an agent from the beginning, but just prior to that, I had some audio offers, and this is way back in the day before audio was that big. I mean, we're talking pretty small advance offers. I knew nothing about it. When I ended up linking up with an agent, he ended up increasing those offers threefold. So that just shows you the benefit, and that's in the very beginning. So if I were to do it without an agent, I think I would have probably gone with a traditional audio publisher. Back then it was Tantor was the first, and then Audible, and then Blackstone. But I spoke about this a couple years ago. I think the most important thing you can do is write the best book possible and then figure out how you're going to publish it. Because once you publish it, depending on how well it does, is going to kind of determine your journey. So and I'm talking about starting out, like if you're a debut author, because I had no idea what I was doing. I wrote a book that was decent. It wasn't great. It just, the algorithms in Amazon, it just went viral. I got really lucky, and then I started realizing, okay, I got to figure out how to market, got to figure out this audio thing, and I need an agent, I think, and so I guess the first step, write a good book, and before you even, if you're self-publishing it, figure out how to market it, figure out what you want to do for audio. I mean, there's other options in publishers. There's ACX as well, which I still use ACX from time to time. So there's a lot of different things. I think doing your research ahead of time and focusing on getting that book done and making it great in terms of cover, editing, all of that stuff, then you're gonna have more likely chance of success after that.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, certainly how, as a publisher, how we acquire audiobook rights is seeing what's connecting in the market. I mean, we want to see all those things that you just described, because that gives us more confidence that when we invest our money in the story, it's going to be, you know, a great story that then is going to sell audiobooks, which is obviously our goal. So in terms of, you know, time frame, I guess, I think what your journey was you put the books out there and then you had incoming interest from publishers.
Yep. And that's, I mean, and I would have a question for you actually too. So as a publisher, are you guys still actively going after people's books that are doing well that don't have the audio rights, or are you more going after people that have agents in that prior to them publishing the books, or is it kind of a combo now?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely both sides. I mean, we publish a lot of first-time authors. A lot of the authors that we publish have no audio in the market, and for us that's great, because then we can establish them in the audio market fresh. There's nothing that hasn't performed that can maybe weigh us down, which that's a factor that we'll look at. Like if there's an author that catches our attention, we look at, you know, what's in the market, and if it's, you know, if there's a whole page of not great looking audiobooks, then that's a concern. Not just because maybe their audience hasn't converted, but that's what a customer's going to see. So just like you're talking about a quality book, if you're going to go into the audio market and through ACX or find a way, you know, the self-publishing route, making sure that it's going to be a top quality audiobook with a great narrator. You know, there's a lot of narrators who approach authors directly and say, hey, I'm the one to record your book, and that might not be the best person.
Yeah.
So maybe it is the best person, but there's a good chance that it's probably not.
And I've never had that experience, but the way I did get my start was having the publishers come to me. But I think that as a debut author, you could do it the opposite way too, try to get representation, or, I mean, like, some of the small presses that, I mean, you can, like, I'm talking with Brett and Steve even, like, they're representing a ton of debut authors now and doing their audio for them, or farming it out, or
Farming it to Podium sometimes.
Right.
Yes,
to,
we do.
I didn't want to say specific publisher, but to different publishers.
Yeah.
And farming might not be the proper way to look at it, but
Sub-licensing
yeah,
is
right.
the technical term.
Yes. So, but yeah, I guess to finish answering that one question, initially, I didn't know what I was doing. I got lucky, but there's totally other ways to do this too. And I think that, especially in today's environment, because back then there weren't small presses like that. People didn't know what they were doing because there weren't 20 books to 50K. Well, maybe there was back then. I don't think there was. Like these types of conferences teach people how to market and how to write good books and all the different things about the industry. So there's people out there that can help you too with, if you do decide to do an audiobook. Like I get questions all the time, like how to use ACX, for example. So, and like how you want to do that. And Victoria just spoke on that about narrators and choosing your narrator. And, you know, maybe you want to talk about going wide versus going direct with them, or.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the other thing to say about, well, to talk about ACX, you know, there's, you can either do per finished hour, pay up front, or you do royalty share. And royalty share means the narrator gives their time and you therefore split the royalties because the narrator has to be paid. And so they're taking the risk along with you. And that can lead to some tangled rights situations, because obviously they then have a share of the rights of your audiobook. So if ever you wanted to, remove that title or do something with it, you then have to strike another agreement with the narrator. So that's another reason I think to be pretty careful about who you get into business with. Not to say not to do it, because everybody can find their own path. But it's a legal agreement, and you may find your partner in this disappears, or you can't extract yourself from that for 7 years, and that's usually what the term is. Sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought. So we talked a little bit about representation. You mentioned you're represented by David Fugate of Launch Books. How did you? It's from my understanding, it's actually quite difficult to get an agent. It sounds like you didn't have difficulty, but sometimes getting an agent can be as challenging as getting a book deal. So we got advice there if you want to be represented.
I think that there's two ways to get represented. One is a long haul, you're querying, you're sending it. I mean, I'm not sure the experience in this room, but that one, never appealed to me. But then again, when I first self-published, I had no idea that anything was gonna happen. So I didn't even really research like the alternative, which would be to query agents and try to get them to represent your book. That can take years. It can be extremely frustrating. It can be, I see the pitch war stuff on Twitter, and I see what some authors that have submitted to so many different agents. But eventually you might find one, and that's great if that's your goal. Because if you wanted to get an agent that way, more than likely you want a traditionally published deal, because they're going to represent you for all your different rights. You might want to work with one of the big 5 publishers. That's the best bet for something like that. If your goal is to self-publish, then you really don't need an agent. The reason that I ended up going with one was because I couldn't do these things for myself. I needed someone to represent me for the audio side, the film side, and all these things that I was getting offers on. And I ended up with a great agent. And there are good agents out there. There's also poor agents out there too. So again, it just goes back to doing research. It goes back to sitting down and figuring out what your goals are when you set out to publish, after you write that great book. And I think that agents, when I started, it used to be more taboo to work with indie authors, because there were so many they were focused all on traditional deals. But my agent represents hybrid authors like me, so he might just do an audio deal for me, and I can still keep the other rights and self-publish. And that's what I did this last time for my last series. But he's also done big deals for me with Orbit and Simon & Schuster, so with all the rights involved. And then foreign rights, that's another thing we could talk about if people are interested in that. But that's another thing an agent can do, is get you into the foreign markets, which are growing. So there's a lot of different things to think about in terms of, you have your Kindle side, you have then the audio. If you want to go the traditional route, then you're really focusing on selling the paperbacks and hardcovers and getting distribution into bookstores. But then long game too, obviously the audio and the foreign rights can be key. Foreign rights can actually net quite a bit of money now as these markets grow.
What do you reckon without getting into specifics, obviously, your proportion of income from subsidiary rights deals versus, so including audio? So I think audio, well, actually some of your deals I guess are whole deals, but like sub-rights income to publishing income.
Well, right now my audio income is probably 75% of my total income. So it's kind of, that shifted dramatically for me, because my audio brand has grown so immense over the past couple years. My Kindle brand used to be what was the huge brand for me. I had a Kindle World. I had, I was getting the Kindle All-Star Awards, and then I sold that series, or my agent sold that series to Orbit, and after that, I still self-published, but not as much, and things just really shifted as my audio took off. So I think in my case, it's I don't know how many authors you're gonna find here that have more in audio income than in Kindle, but it just happened to be that way for me because I got really lucky with 2 of my series that have just taken off like crazy on Audible and other sites. So
Yeah, I mean, we definitely see that dynamic.
you do see it
Yeah,
more
yeah,
so now?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, well, and think about it, audiobook is a fundamentally more expensive thing for the most part. I mean, usually with, you know, self-published, indie published price points for ebooks. I mean, so you know,
Yeah.
you've got an audiobook that costs this much and an ebook that costs this much, so
Right.
you're relatively gonna, you know, make more money, especially if you're selling an awful lot of them. So on the foreign side, what languages are you published in?
Right now, all my stuff's in German, and then I believe some of my stuff's being translated to Russian and Spanish, and those are the biggest markets right now. Like,
So
you
on
know,
those deals, are you, anything special that you're asking for? Anything in those contracts that you can give any insight on?
not really. I think the important thing about foreign deals is working with a publisher that's legitimate, because there's also a lot of people that are a lot of like translators, people that are saying they're publishers that are trying to, I think, prey on indies right now to have to say that they'll translate their stuff into other languages, but then that indie author would then probably be responsible for publishing them on other sites or other countries, like on Amazon. You know, DE is the German side of things. So I think, and I've seen that happen before, but there's also smaller foreign publishers that aren't offering money either. They're just offering to do the translation. So it's kind of like a no advance. We'll publish you, we'll take care of the translation, and then we'll give you 20% royalties, for example, and which is okay. I mean, that still would be better than not having a deal in another country, but then you're counting on, I mean, translation costs a lot of money. So if they're footing that bill, it's like an audio publisher footing the narration. So it's still worth it. But ideally, you want to try to get a deal with a legitimate foreign publisher that's going to give you an advance, good royalties, and do all those other things for you. Because some of like the German market is huge right now. It's like grown so fast. And I was out in Germany with my German publisher a couple years ago, and just seeing how they run things there. It's also a different setup in terms of how you can sell books, because Amazon, they have, I think there are literally laws in Germany that do not allow publishers to run certain price points, like discounted sales and stuff on their ebooks. So in that sense too, like as an indie author, if I were to hire someone to translate my books, which I have considered doing, and then publishing myself, I would not be able to utilize the same strategies that I do here for my books, like discounting in certain countries. So there's a whole nother part of the game you have to learn. And so again, there's different ways to do things, but I think, and going back to like the percentages on that too, like it's not huge, but it's definitely can add up. Some authors have 40 or 50 foreign deals, and
Right.
that can end up being a lot, especially if one of those deals does really well in another country, because it's interesting to see what American books do. Like in Germany, for example, some of the weirdest books that aren't doing well here are doing amazing over there. So it's
Yeah, it feels to me a bit like the US market in 2011. To me, that's my sense of,
Okay, yeah,
that there's an opportunity for indies abroad,
yeah.
where, because indies aren't there, and the market is sort of dominated by trads in those markets, and you know, Kindle is taking off there, kind of trying to break in. I mean, there's definitely more digital competition, and I think in some place like France is very print dominated, and the publishers are very focused on print. So where you've got more choice for readers, I think they want choice. I think that's what people who like to read want to see, is like more options, and I think that's what indies provided, you know, back in the day, and still today. Like you're giving readers like what they want. Sorry, I've kind of lost my thread on the foreign. Oh, so you reckon about 20% is 20% of net receipts from the foreign publisher, sort of around the range.
I think it's probably
That sounds-
accurate. Yeah.
Sounds about right.
Yep. But I do have some audio deals too that are a little
Right.
bit different. But yeah, that's pretty accurate, I would say.
So, and it sounds like, it's a similar advice to, if you're in the English-speaking market looking for a publisher, you look at what the publisher's published and maybe talk to some of the authors that they've worked with and get, recommendations and see if they're legitimate. I mean, that's a good warning about the translation. I hadn't heard that was
Yeah,
going on.
I've heard a lot about it recently. I mean, when I was in Comic Con in San Diego in 2016, I had someone come up to me to offer to do that, and that was a long time ago. And it started, and I know it's gotten like there's legit businesses doing this now though,
Mhm.
but there's a difference between some of those legit businesses and some people that are literally preying on indie authors to do this, and you're paying them. And I mean, I'm sure there's scams too, but there's something to look out for. I mean, I don't know how prevalent it is, but I've heard a lot about it.
Yeah. Well, where there's money to be made, there will be pirates.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
always people that will
Yeah.
try to figure out a way to make profits on something. So, and
Yeah.
this I've seen a lot in book publishing too. So you do have to be careful. But as Victoria just said, I mean, talking to people is your best resource. Other authors that have been through things. So, and that's if you guys have questions for me, happy to answer anything later too.
Yeah. What have I on my list? So on the film front, do you how have your options worked? You've had a number of options. Can you talk a little bit about kind of how, what the period of time is, like how that's worked?
Sure. So a film TV option generally is going to be, it kind of depends on who you're working with, but I think 12 to 18 months is fair to say is the general time frame that you basically sell the option to a producer, director, whoever. I mean, there's a lot of different people involved. Like I've had multiple people option. One was a screenwriter, one had a lot of different hats. People I'm talking to now wear a lot of different hats too. But basically, they're going to pay you for that period of time to option, meaning they get your rights and they can take it out to studios or get a screenwriter assigned. I mean, the levels are usually tiered. I've gone to basically level 1. So you get optioned, then you get something that might be signed by a studio or like Netflix or something like that, and then you have production. That's where the money's at. You get paid like literally the first day I think they start filming or something like that. I can't remember. That's when you get the big chunk of things. But it's really hard to get here.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to hear a lot about people getting to this option stage. And the main thing is if you do ever get approached, and more than likely a lot of people in this room will, because that's another thing. There's a lot of legitimate people out there, but there's also a lot of illegitimate people that are offering no money for an option period and that have no way of getting this movie made or TV show. So for me, I went through a ton of different people that came to me with, offers or not offers, and had no ability to get things made. I finally was able to find people that are totally legit, have had things made, had a plan. That's what you're really looking for, because in the option stage, you're not going to make much money. You want to try to get your rights with someone that can get to this part of this level, because otherwise you're wasting 12 to 18 months of your option, and that's, to me, is worth more than $10,000-$15,000. Like, you want to option off something that has a legit chance at getting made rather than getting $10,000 or nothing.
Spending $10,000 on lawyers while you attempt to close the contract.
Right, and you have to, and I would say you need to have an agent for this too. Like my agent has a co-agent, and I think they get 20%, but there's really no other option. Like, I guess you could hire an entertainment lawyer, but it's different than Hollywood's different than publishing.
Yeah.
So you want to be careful, and you really just want to try to find someone that. The other thing is like finding someone that actually has read and loved your story. Make sure that they've read your story and they know what it is, because like I can't tell you how many times I've had people reach out to me because of sales, but if they're not passionate about your book, they're not going to try to get you to this level, because from their end, like a producer might be buying up 10, 20 books a year. And maybe they haven't read them. They're just trying to bank on the book continuously doing well or better. And at that point, maybe they will put some money into doing a pitch deck or something to get it to, you know, a studio to try to sell it. But most of the time, I think they're just sitting on the stuff like a slush pile. So,
or potentially wanting to buy it so that nobody else can buy it.
Yeah,
or they have something competitive in the pipe and they don't want this going to someone else.
yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a complicated realm.
Can we take a question?
Oh, yeah.
Question right here.
I'm just curious, how long do you normally have an option for?
12 to 18 months is that period. Right now, I think I'm not going to do an option for this next one. I'm thinking about doing like a shopping agreement, which is less time. A shopping agreement is where you agree to let someone shop that out to a studio or streaming place, and they would have like 9 months to do it. So it's almost like lighting a fire under them to get it done faster, but
And that's still exclusive.
it is, yeah. And the reason to do that would be if you find someone that is legit, that has an idea and has a plan to do that, because then they'll just straight up try to go to step 2. They can't get step 2, they're done. And then it comes back to you, the option comes back to you, so.
Yeah, we've been signing some shopping agreements with our authors where we see, you know, potential in opening doors in the Hollywood world. We're represented by William Morris Endeavor, Podium is, so that we can, you know, have their books team represent our content that we have signed shopping agreements with authors into, you know, into the market. So it's, you know, it's not everything, because you can't, not everything is gonna be sold, but it means that we know confidently that nobody else is gonna be trying to sell this IP at the same time, because agents hate that, and well, producers hate that, to have multiple approaches from multiple different people about the same IP. That is not good. But that's a good point about, you know, somebody being passionate about your story, because they are selling it. Like, they've, you know, you've sold it to them, and then they have to sell it up the chain. And if they don't feel passionately about it, it's gonna be hard for them to make those pitches.
Right, yeah.
So let's talk a little bit more about your audio books. You've had some great narrator partnerships. Do you want to talk a little bit about who those narrators are, like how that's impacted your writing, and if you think about how you write your books now in a different way? Now audio is such a big part of your picture.
Yeah, so I guess I'll just start going back to when I first started in audio. I didn't have any options for narrators. Like, the publishers didn't give me the option, is what I'm saying, until Blackstone with my Helldiver series gave me a bunch of options based off, I think, the success of my earlier series that had Bronson Pinchot. But before that, it was Audible, and I didn't even know who my narrator was. I didn't know when my book was coming out. I just saw it on Audible one day and looked the narrator up. So then I went with Blackstone for my next series. They hired Bronson. That series did pretty well. So then I guess that took me to the next level. And then for Helldivers, which was a all rights deal with Blackstone, they did, and I'm by the way, Anne is from Blackstone, so just point her out real quick. Hopefully that's okay, but I keep pointing back there, so it's like, that's Anne from Blackstone. Okay, so for Helldivers, all the rights went to them except for foreign at that time, and so they print, ebook, all that stuff, and they gave me a list, and R.C. Bray was on that, and I love R.C. Bray with R.C. Bray, and Dean Cole is in the audience too. He's an R.C. Bray author, and I believe with Podium now as well. So R.C. Bray did my Helldiver series, and it was fantastic. Like, that's the one that took off big time. I have another couple series with him now, but I think you're probably not going to get a narrator option or approval in a contract if you're a debut author. Am I right?
I mean, our contention is, if you're an author who listens to tons of audiobooks and knows the audio world well and has written a book with a certain voice in mind, we want to hear that information. We have calls with, you know, authors before we're signing them, and we get that information out of them. And if they have you know, on their dream board, you know, a certain narrator, we will take that on and then take it to our casting department. Like, we have a great casting team that will, you know, look at the text, and maybe it is the same. Maybe there's a mind meld and it is, you know, the same name, but oftentimes authors come to us and they have no idea. They are a writer, they don't listen to audiobooks, and they want us to help. Like, so that's what our value that we can bring one of them to the project. So narrator approval is definitely an aspect of a contract that you can negotiate for, and we do. I mean, we grant that. Whether or not, you know, it's a good idea. Oftentimes, even when the author has approval, they often go with who we suggest, like, as the first pick. So it's kind of nominal, but I agree. I think it puts some good power in the hands of the author. But again, it's only helpful power if you know what you want and you know what's good for the product. Because if you suggest somebody who's completely wrong, we're not going to want to invest in that and pay for that person if we don't believe that the audiobook is going to work.
Yeah, and certain narrators do have certain genres they do better in.
Yeah.
And the other thing about narration right now is, as audio gets bigger, narrators get busier, so it's harder to schedule them. And even through ACX now, I think a lot of the bigger name narrators that were doing the royalty shares aren't doing that anymore. Because, you know, they might have taken a big hit on a deal, or it might be a gamble for them, because audio still can be a gamble. I mean, you can have a great following and still not have, and that's the other thing I was going to talk about earlier too, like Kindle. Just because you have a really huge success in Kindle does not necessarily mean it will translate into audio. And the one thing I want to say about a recipe for success, if in a dream situation for you, you would release the Kindle and the audio at the same time to give it the best chance of doing well. Because oftentimes, and I know that's not possible for everyone, it's not possible for me even all the time, but I think that is the best way to do it, because oftentimes readers are going to, just based off algorithms and how everything works on Amazon, you know, readers will often pick up an ebook and then add on that Audible a la carte. And if the Audible's not there, they might not go back to that eventually because they'll have missed it. So
Yeah.
that's the one thing I wanted to say earlier. I just want to mention it real quick because, and that's why publishers also want you to, like, publishers gonna want, if you're self-publishing the ebook side of things, Victoria here is probably gonna want you to publish the audio the same day as the ebook, right? Like, if you can.
We're really flexible because we work with indies.
Yeah.
And, you know, you can finish a book on Thursday and publish it on Tuesday or Friday. You know, and we need a certain amount of time to make the audiobook. So if you're gonna hold an author back on that income, then, you know, that's maybe not something that the author wants to do. So
True.
we're you know, we partner tightly with our authors, and if that's possible, if we're very, very, very tightly lined up, like, and maybe it's only 10 weeks of gap and the author can support that financially, you know, and they can hold back on those sales, then yeah, that's our contention as well, right? Because you get all and like I said earlier, consumers want choice, and they want to choose the ebook or the audiobook, and then you also don't hear like, well, when's the audiobook coming? You know, that's the question that most authors are asked if they've published an ebook and there's no audiobook.
Yeah, and for me, my personal experience working with publishers is they want me to publish the same day due to what I'm talking about. But when you're working exclusively with indies, so this is another thing I was going to say earlier, some of the biggest names in my genre do publish without having any audio deals even in place. So they're selling tons of ebooks, but they want to see how that ebook does. Then that's going to give them a better opportunity to work with, to get a higher advance for the audio, or to give them different opportunities. So yeah. I don't really that would not be my strategy, because here's what can happen there. Let's say this author has an amazing launch and their books do really well for one series, they get a good audio deal, the audio comes out, does okay. Well, they could launch again and not have a good launch at all. So it's kind of a gamble. That's why I like to try to arrange things ahead of time and try to put everything I can into both of those formats doing well. Because I look at it as a single product that's just it's just a different way of telling the story. So like if one of my publishers is putting money into the audio version, I'm putting money into the Kindle version if I'm marketing it, if I'm self-publishing that. So that's just a different strategy, but there's, like I said, and this is part of what I want to talk about, which is there's so many different ways to do things. I'm just saying like what can happen. It can be good or bad. So, but then again, anything can be good or bad in this business.
Yeah, I mean, there's schools of thought, right?
Yeah.
There's schools of thought about staggering and, you know, whether you're cannibalizing sales of one or the other, or, I mean, it's hard to predict, but, you know,
very hard to predict in this market.
Yeah.
Now,
Dean?
excuse me, and I would just add that it also helps the efficacy of your advertising campaigns.
Bless you.
You're paying for a click. If you're running an ad, you're paying for a click. They go to your site or your book's page on Amazon, and if they're an audio book buyer, you just lost a sale. You wasted a click, and you hurt your algorithms because they went to your page and they didn't buy.
Yep, I totally agree with that. That's why it's good, in my opinion, to have them built out, and that's why I struggle to. I really aim at having my audio out the same day, because my whole marketing strategy is geared towards that. Can really screw things up if it's not, but other authors do it the opposite way and do have success too. So
I think it becomes more important if you're like me, centric on audio, because then I really hurt my algorithms. If I put it out and the ebook's out, and I've got most of my customers are audiobook fans, so they're clicking on it, they're not buying, and that really hurts me.
yeah, there's a lot of things to think about.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really good point, and especially, you know, you can't, you know, you can't see the audio clicks, so you really have to have faith that, you know, that people are buying.
Yeah.
Bill?
Yeah, how do you go about finding publishers who are willing to take on books that are already out there and are doing okay, or better than okay, or even bad, let's say, and turning them into, you know, finding them interested in taking on your book as an audio book?
Well, I mean, we take pitches, so we have a website, podiumaudio.com, where authors can get in touch with us and, you know, share a link to their title, and we assess it and see if it's something that we think we can make work in audio. I mean, if it's doing badly in book form, then that's probably not going to work for us, because obviously we want something that's, you know, doing well. And I'm sure the other publishers do similar. We actually take a very active approach at finding the things that we wanna work on, and so oftentimes we will be reaching out to authors. So I would say, make sure you're reachable. Make sure there's an email address or a website or something that allows us to find you, and check your Facebook messages. You know, we reach out to authors in a lot of different ways, and it's amazing how difficult it can be to find author contacts. So if you're interested in being found, then yeah, have your contact like
Make sure
somewhere.
you've got your author page up and running on Amazon at least.
At least. Yeah, and some authors have, you know, they put their I don't know that this is a great idea, but some have their email address in their bio on Amazon. You may want to put it in your front matter, because it's how fans get hold of you too. And if you have a contact me on your website or whatever, but check the messages too.
Yeah, one thing I found works is having a link on your website so that they can email you.
Yeah.
Rather than just putting it out there.
Yeah, I mean, the market, I mean, to Nick's point, the market is really hot in audio. So if you have something that's doing really well, you will be hearing from an audiobook publisher.
They'll reach out to you more than
What
likely.
is considered doing really well, though?
I would say, it depends on your genre, and it depends, like what the competition is that week, but kind of ranking in the top 50,000, I would say. And having a lot of good ratings, having good reviews.
And how much is a lot? I mean, I've got like over 100 on most of my books, and
That's good.
I've
More
been in
than
the top
10.
50 for months.
More than 10. Yeah, it depends on how long it's been on the market. If it's been on the market for, 3 weeks and you've got 10 ratings, that's pretty good. If it's been on the market for 3 years and you've got 10 ratings, that's not so good, or not so appealing. Any other?
Scott had a question.
Oh, did Scott have a question?
Go ahead.
Okay.
You sure?
Yeah, go.
Nick, you mentioned having a subsidiary rights agent, and so I got a deal, a German publisher reached out to me, and I tried to get a subsidiary rights agent,
Okay.
and nobody would take me because they wanted to do the whole thing holistic, and I'm not willing to sell my ebooks and stuff, so I got an entertainment lawyer who negotiated my deal, but I do want to still pursue other subsidiary rights. If you have any advice for finding an agent that does just that?
So that does everything, is what you're saying?
No.
Yeah, I just want to do the subsidiary rights, so like I
Okay.
want to still indie publish my
Yeah.
books, but
Sure.
I'd still like to have the option.
Yeah, David Fugate is mine, and that's kind of what I wouldn't say he specializes in that, because he's got it, I mean, he's done so many deals. I think he said he's done 3,000 deals or something. I'm not sure how many authors he has, but sometimes he just does subsidiary rights for me. So there are agents like that out there. David's the only one that comes to mind that I know off the top of my head, but I know there are others.
See, it depends on your genre. What genre do you write in?
Romance.
Kimberly Brower is a great agent. We work with a lot. I mean, Sarah Hirschman we do a lot of deals with. I don't know if you have access to Publishers Lunch, but if you do, then you can see what agents are making deals. And if you see familiar names in the deals that they're making, then reach out to one of your author friends and get a warm introduction.
Yeah.
Yeah. Scott, did you want to?
Yeah, I just wanted to go back, Nick, you were talking about kind of the business of being an author, and then the time that you spend to write. We talked a little bit about this before, but how has that ebbed and flowed for you over the kind of course of the time in the last 7 years? Like, how much of your time are you spending on the business of being an author versus actually writing? And then what kind of volume are you doing in terms of writing on a monthly basis, like word count, and how do you think about that?
Yeah, so I mean, I got to go back to, I did some Ironman triathlons that taught me to be super disciplined with my time, because otherwise I wouldn't have been able to do anything but train while I was working. I used to work for Homeland Security. So when I started writing, I had this like regiment, and I started from the very beginning that I would edit in the mornings, I'd do my marketing in the mornings, and in the afternoon I'd write. And I've pretty much been a 40 to 50,000 words a month author for my whole career. Never really experienced much writer's block. My marketing and admin stuff has kind of shifted, but I would say it's probably about 20 to 25% a week. But as my business has grown, that's also all sorts of things have come into play now, like with taxes and my publishing company and paying authors. So that's kind of grown. I would say it used to be like 10% of my time outside of writing and editing and whatnot. But yeah, generally speaking, I mean, I'm doing 40, 50,000 words a month, and putting out 4 to 5 books a year. And I try to make all my books about 100,000 words, just so they can translate into audio at that 10-hour sweet spot. Because I know a lot of people don't like to spend a credit or buy an audiobook that's less than that. So I kind of have this like routine that I do, and I've never really wavered from it. And I would like to, because that's lost a lot of hair over the past couple of years. But I do love what I do, so that helps. I think being a writer is just an amazing opportunity, and we're in an amazing opportunity right now with Amazon and Audible and being able to self-publish and, you know, network with people, like, this is a great time to be a writer. And for audio too.
The gatekeepers are not minding the gate.
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
Is there a specific genre that you feel or you've noticed is up and coming more in audio? Or are there certain genres that do better or worse that you are aware of that you're noticing right now?
I mean, for quite a while, probably till COVID, I would have said like YA and teen, sort of younger content wasn't marketable particularly, but I think with you know, families at home, you know, the younger fiction has like become more of an audio, more marketable in audio, but it's still like it's an expensive thing, and so it's going to be parents buying audiobooks for their kids. It's not a kid-driven purchasing decision. So I would say that's one thing. I mean, we are a genre publisher. We're doing, you know, a lot of romance, reverse harem. I'm always corrected, harem. Lit RPG is hot. I mean, it has been for the last couple of years, but it hasn't ebbed.
Yeah.
So yeah, and you know, just the alien romance. I mean, that's something that we've seen. Just and Ruby Dixon. I mean, you look, Ruby Dixon's an indie author, and she's, you know, got a huge deal, and so they're noticing. But we were there first. So are we out of time?
We are out of time. but
Okay.
Yeah, if you have any other questions.
Any other questions?
I have one that I can ask afterwards.
No, go ahead. I don't
Yeah,
know
yeah.
that anyone
There's no rush. It's
nobody's
lunchtime,
talking on the
so.
ballot,
Okay, cool. When my first book released from my series, I was contacted by an audio publishing company, but I was so freaked out that like this literally was the second book I've ever written. And I was like, let me get down the road on this series because I wanted to make sure I could actually write a series since I've never written one. And so I basically said, you know, I'm not interested at this time, but now that I like hear stuff about, you know, getting that more closer to the launch of the ebook and things like that, I'm trying to figure out, should I go ahead and just do audiobook at this point in time now that 2 books of the series are out?
Is book
Is it
one
well, or-
still selling when you?
Yeah, my first book has over 900 reviews on Amazon.
Let's talk.
And then the second one is almost 700, and the third one just released last month, and I think it's at 500 or 600 already.
Please, I'll give you my card. That sounds
So
fantastic.
You
Yeah.
say it's still,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, if there's still activity, I mean, if it's still, you know, people are still on the listing on Amazon, yeah, I mean, that's definitely, you're leaving money on the table.
That's what I was gonna say.
and then I was just curious, like, how do you assess, like, doing it yourself?
Right.
You know, through like a Findaway or something like that versus going with an audio publishing company?
That is my entire pitch. I'll give you in a minute.
Okay.
If you have a publisher and you're starting out in audio, I think it'd be better to go with a publisher than do it on your own, because especially if you're new, there's a lot of work to go into ACX finding narrators. So if you have a legit awesome publisher, definitely go for that,
Thank you.
in my opinion.
Mine
Do
too.
it, you can do it.
Thank
I mean, it's good to hear it from somebody besides.
Exactly, like I
who
could tell
doesn't
you,
have a stake in it.
yeah, I can tell you that till I'm blue in the face, but that is what a lot, we don't publish, Nick, but I mean, this is the message that our authors that we do publish to give to their author friends when they ask, so, yeah.
And I've done both, and I'm really enjoying working with Podium. Audio comes up on that.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Dean.
there's quite a few for ACX, and the Podium, rather than everyone else.
Great, well, thank you.
Thank you.